The sun was dropping behind the jagged western horizon when the rancher, Cole Maddox, rode across the dusty plain toward the canyon that locals whispered about only in nervous tones. Cole was known for many things: his strength, his loyalty, his refusal to leave a person behind. But there was one thing he feared, more than any man would admit: deep, narrow spaces. It was not the dark that troubled him, nor the silence, but the suffocating closeness of rock walls trapping him, squeezing him, stealing his breath. No one knew this secret, except the empty desert winds that had once heard him gasping as a child, buried under the collapsed beams of an old barn. Now, years later, that buried memory clawed its way up his spine again as he noticed a frantic rider racing toward him from the direction of the canyon. It was Tom Hale, a ranch hand who rarely panicked about anything, yet his horse was soaked in sweat and his breath came in broken bursts as he shouted,
"Cole!"
"It's Maria. She fell. She's trapped between the canyon walls." Cole did not pause, did not question, did not give himself time to think. His body moved before his fear could stop him. He turned his horse sharply and rode hard across the plain, each hoofbeat thundering like a countdown toward the one place in the world he wished never to face again. When he reached the canyon entrance, he heard it, a faint cry echoing between the walls. "Amen. Please, faster. Harder." It wasn't a prayer of pain, but a desperate plea. Maria calling to anyone who could hear her, urging them to dig harder, move faster, fight harder against the collapsing stone around her. Cole dropped to his knees near the narrow gap where Tom had already been trying to move rocks with bleeding hands. Without hesitation, Cole joined him, his breathing tightening as the walls seemed to lean inward, his heartbeat pounding as if the canyon itself wanted to swallow him. Every instinct in his body screamed to back away, to escape, to leave the suffocating space, yet the faint voice from within kept him anchored. Maria, the woman who had worked beside him on the ranch for years, the one with a brave laugh and a fire in her spirit, was somewhere inside, crushed between stone and fear. Cole forced himself to breathe, forced himself to push past the trembling in his hands, forced himself to whisper, "Hold on, Maria, I'm coming." The rocks were sharp, digging into his palms as he pulled them away, one by one, ignoring the sting of torn skin and dust scraping his throat. Sweat rolled into his eyes, but he did not stop. The canyon's walls grew tighter as he crawled deeper, his shoulders scraping the stone until he could barely move. His body locked up, his lungs clenched. The memory of wood beams crashing, trapping him, choking him, flooded his mind, and for a heartbeat he froze. Then he heard her, clearer now. "Cole, please." That voice shattered the chains of his fear. With a growl of determination, he dragged himself forward, smashing loose rocks with his forearm, pushing harder, moving faster. The world narrowed to nothing but the sound of his breath, the crushing stone, and the woman he refused to lose. When he finally reached her, Maria was pinned by a heavy slab resting across her leg, her face streaked with dust and tears, but her eyes bright with hope the second she saw him. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. Cole swallowed the tightness in his chest and gripped the rock. "I'll get you out, I promise." The canyon trembled again, as if warning them both of the danger, but he didn't stop. He pushed against the slab with every ounce of strength he had left, feeling his muscles tear, feeling the weight of fear inside him heavier than the stone itself. "Come on," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Come on." And as the last thread of daylight faded into night, the rock shifted. Maria gasped, pulling her leg free just as another rumble shook the canyon. Cole threw an arm around her, dragging her toward the opening, praying the walls would hold long enough, praying his fear would not choke him before they reached safety. Somewhere behind them the canyon cracked again, dust raining down like a warning. Cole knew one thing: he would get her out or he would die trying. Cole dragged Maria through the narrowing canyon path, each inch feeling like a mile as the weight of the collapsing stone thundered behind them. The ground trembled beneath their bodies, sending sharp jolts through Maria's injured leg and nearly knocking Cole off balance. Still, he pressed forward, breath ragged, heart pounding with a desperate rhythm that matched the crumbling canyon walls. The air grew thicker with dust, making each inhale a battle, yet he refused to slow down. Maria clung to him, her fingers gripping the back of his shirt as though letting go would mean surrendering to the darkness closing in around them. "Cole, you're shaking," she whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "Don't worry about me," he replied, though his voice betrayed the fear clawing at his throat. The tight walls squeezed in on him again, the stone seeming to pulse like a living creature, hungry and merciless. His old nightmare returned with violent force, the memory of being trapped as a boy beneath the collapsed barn roof, the darkness pressing in, the air thinning until he could barely breathe. But this time, someone needed him, someone who believed in him, and that belief was the only thing holding his fear at bay. He pushed forward, guiding Maria through a crack barely wide enough for them to pass. When her injured leg buckled, Cole caught her, lifting her into his arms despite the fire shooting through his own muscles. The canyon roared behind them like thunder ripping open the earth. Maria buried her face against his chest as dust fell like rain, choking the narrow space. "Cole, leave me," she gasped. "You'll never make it carrying me." But Cole only tightened his grip. "I'm not losing you," he whispered fiercely. "Not now. Not ever." He staggered forward, each step a war against the crushing weight of fear and stone. The wall shook again. A massive crack echoed through the canyon like a death sentence. Cole ducked instinctively, shielding Maria with his body as a boulder smashed down behind them, sealing the path they had just crossed. They had seconds, maybe less. He forced himself onward, chest burning, legs trembling, his vision blurring from the dust and strain. The light ahead flickered, a faint glow signaling the wider opening of the canyon. Freedom, safety, air. He reached toward it as though grabbing at hope itself. But just as they neared the mouth of the canyon, the ground trembled violently beneath them. A deafening roar filled the air as the canyon ceiling gave one final groan, like a giant taking its last breath before collapsing. Cole shoved Maria forward with all the remaining strength in his body. "Go!" he shouted. She stumbled into the open sunlight, collapsing onto the sand. When she turned back, her scream tore through the quiet desert. "Cole!" The canyon mouth had begun to cave in, rocks tumbling like an avalanche. Cole was still inside. His body slumped against a falling slab as he forced one final push, using his shoulder to wedge the stone away long enough to slip through the opening. But the moment he emerged, a massive boulder crashed down at the exit, blocking the canyon completely and sending a shockwave of dust and debris across the plain. Cole staggered, took one shaky step toward Maria, and collapsed to his knees. His breath hitched, his chest heaving as though the air refused to reach his lungs. Maria crawled to him despite the pain in her leg, catching his shoulders before he could fall face first into the sand. Cole, look at me," she cried, brushing dust from his face. His eyes fluttered open, filled not with fear but relief. "You're safe," he whispered, voice barely audible. "That's all that matters." She shook her head, tears streaking the dirt on her cheeks. "What matters is you. You saved me. You faced your worst fear for me." Cole tried to respond, but his body finally gave in to exhaustion. He collapsed fully into her arms, the world spinning into a blur of heat and fading daylight. She screamed for help, her voice echoing across the quiet plain, and to her shock, distant riders appeared on the horizon. Tom and several ranch hands stormed toward them, having returned with ropes, shovels, and supplies. Within moments they lifted Cole onto a makeshift stretcher and carried him toward camp while Maria limped beside them, refusing to leave his side. Hours later, under the soft glow of lantern light, Cole awakened inside a canvas tent. Maria sat beside him, her leg bandaged, her hand resting gently on his. "Thought I lost you," she whispered. Cole blinked slowly, taking in her tear-streaked face. "Not a chance," he murmured, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "If that canyon couldn't keep me—" "Nothing will," she laughed softly, relief pouring out of her like a broken dam. "You collapsed saving me," she said. "You fought the one thing you feared most." Cole exhaled deeply, his eyes drifting toward the tent ceiling. "Fear is only powerful," he said, "when we face it alone." Maria squeezed his hand. "Well, you'll never face anything alone again." In the quiet night, surrounded by warm lantern light and the distant sounds of horses settling, Cole realized something he had never admitted before. Strength wasn't in never fearing. It was in fighting through fear for someone who mattered. And as Maria leaned her head against his shoulder, whispering, "Amen. Thank you," Cole knew the canyon had not broken him. It had transformed him.